Welcome to CFX Download. I'm Amy McLean, Editorial Director of Cable Facts, and I'm here with my colleagues Noah Ziegler and John Saavedra. CFX Download is a podcast about cable, broadband, and media, but I've always wanted to host a true crime podcast. So indulge me for just a moment, settle in, and get ready for a story that will make your spine tingle. So picture it. You've got a 144 pair cable that's been severed. Now, this is not easy to cut through. It's difficult because of its large diameter. It's got a tough outer jacket. It's got complex construction that needs specialized tools and careful technique. But it's cut, which doesn't seem to indicate that this is a run-of-the-mill, someone trying to look for fiber. My source told me that it could take days for someone to cut through one of these, especially someone without real knowledge of the industry. And that's what we've been talking about this past week at SCTE Tech Expo, these incidences of vandalism. We've been hearing about these for a few years now, and I think most of us, including myself, sort of thought, okay, these are folks that are out there looking for fiber, sometimes totally looking in the wrong place and making these cuts. But there's something sometimes that's happening that's a little bit more nefarious. Comcast VP of Network Maintenance, Mike Spalding, said that there have been incidents where they have multiple cuts in a single day, and it seems coordinated, where they seem to know exactly the right place to make the cut, and they're making the cut in other places that would have took care of the redundancy there. And if you read the news right now, there's investigations about undersea cable cuts that are taking down the internet with folks pointing fingers at China and Russia. So, I think those initial thoughts, yes, there are people out there trying to steal copper, but it could be something much more malicious at play. And to drive that point home, at Expo, we had the FBI there. The FBI was in the house. And, the agent there was talking about how some of this does appear to be copper thefts, but others appear to be deliberate efforts to take out critical infrastructure, to eliminate communications between law enforcement and factions of government. And he was really encouraging operators to reach out to the FBI when they find these cuts because, quote, there are organizations, there could be other countries, people that are both criminally or politically motivated that are attempting to damage our ability to communicate. So some pretty scary stuff, in my opinion. It really caught my attention because I realized there could be more at play here. Maybe these are people that are just trying to find our weaknesses in the network. And maybe most of it's copper theft. We don't really know, but we're going to be talking about this for a while. On Tuesday, October 7th, the Telecom Industry Summit is going to convene in Los Angeles. It's hosted by AT&T. This is their Protecting Critical Communications Infrastructure Summit. And, just to give you a sense of how much this is happening, NCTA reported for the last 7 months of 2024, there were 5,770 reported incidents of these kinds of theft or vandalism or communication targeting. And I'm told they're going to release new numbers at this conference next week. And it sounds like they're going to be eye-popping. So we're definitely going to be watching for that. John, did you hear much about this issue at Expo?
Well, first, Amy, I'm so happy to be a guest on your true crime podcast. I've always wanted to be one. Work. Yeah, I've always wanted to be in one, not as a victim, not as a suspect, just to be able to talk on a true crime podcast. So I really appreciate that. Yeah. So while first of all, you have to stress that this was a pretty big focus of Tech Expo Day 2, devoting not only this FBI panel, but also during the morning headliners panel, there was one featuring Elad Nafshi from Comcast. He's the chief network officer, and then Tom Monaghan, who is EVP of Field Operations. Elad is also the chair on the strike board, and Tom Monaghan is the vice chair on the strike board. And strike stands for Strategic Threat Response and Infrastructure Knowledge Exchange. There are the alliance that are working to sort of address and create awareness for this network vandalism and or sabotage that is going on across the country. So they had a panel and they discussed sort of the big issues and what they feel needs to be done. I mean, Monaghan minced no words, didn't mince words when talking about this. His big points were that there need to be stronger policies. So right now, network vandalism is a felony. He said that network vandalism is a felony in 28 states, but he stressed that it really should be a felony in all 50 states. He also stressed that, you know, when people are caught and, you know, when people are caught, that these cases need to be prosecuted. He said that the other issue is that a lot of the time they aren't prosecuted. Like he gave an example about a cut that happened during the day, and that person was not prosecuted. So he said these things need to lead to prosecution, or else the problem isn't going to stop. You know, he really stressed that, you know, the attacks are getting more brash. Like I said, while maybe we've thought of this as something that happens at night, there have been attacks during the day on networks, and they're not always about, you know, they're not always about copper theft, is what they stressed as well. You know, from a lot also made the point that some of this isn't about theft. It is about, he had the line of like, it's vandalism for vandalism's sake, which I thought was like a particularly interesting point to put across. And then he said that Comcast is really focusing a lot of its time and money into catching cuts as quickly as possible. So catching where they're happening, you know, where in the network, where the network's being affected, and trying to correct it fix the problem as quickly as possible. That is something that Comcast is really working on. But I mean, yeah, the overall message there was that the policies need to be stronger in order to stop this, and that, as you said, Amy, some of this might not even be about theft, which is a scary thought to think. Well, what the purpose of these attacks are. But yeah, it's scary stuff.
Yeah, I didn't go home and start prepping or anything for us to live off the grid. I mean, it really is scary though. And when you talk about power grids too, that's a whole another, and I think that's important to note, that this isn't just a cable industry problem. It's across all the telecommunications sectors. It involves power companies. It's something everyone's seeing. And some of it can just be people who are desperate trying to find copper and don't even understand that what they're cutting is not copper or doesn't have the copper they can use. Sometimes it does. But one of the stats I saw from NCTA is there are 44 incidences of vandalism and theft of broadband networks across the U.S. per day, which it's a pretty big number. Yeah, no, I know you've been. This is the third summit that they're holding in LA on Tuesday, but there's been one in Dallas. There's been one in St. Louis. I think you've covered a few of these, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the one in St. Louis, I believe, was in April, and that was kind of when NCTA really, or a bunch of organizations, including NCTA, CTIA, Verizon, and AT&T, were at that one as well. But that was when it really felt sort of. I mean, there's always been, you know, sort of awareness and sort of a drive to go, hey, we really need to address this issue, but it felt like that was ramping it up. And then a couple months later, on July 1st, I only know that because it's my birthday, Charter really ramped it up and started describing these types of attacks as domestic terrorism, which that did receive some pushback because some people thought that might have been a little too aggressive, but it seems like they do have reason to think, you know, it does check the boxes to be classified as domestic terrorism. And at that, there has been support of the, I'm getting this right, Stopping the Theft and Destruction of Broadband Act of 2025. That was introduced in the House of Representatives, but last time I checked, it doesn't seem like there has been much movement since that has been, I think, first introduced in April. So it's becoming very much, obviously, just top of mind for these companies. And you mentioned Comcast investing a lot of money into identifying these issues, John, and we've heard all about how AI has been used to sort of, you know, pinpoint exactly where these issues are and how it can maybe even step in to fix some of those things. But obviously, again, with those cuts, that there's some of those things are just beyond things that AI can fix. So it's certainly something Charter's paid a lot of attention to, and the industry at large has as well. And it seems like it's only just going to get more and more awareness until there's tangible movement made in the prosecution aspect of things and just getting more awareness around it.
Yeah, no, and I think Charter was the first one to call these acts of domestic terrorism, which I think some people kind of rolled their eyes when they did that. Like, but when you think about some of these bad actors that may be involved, that's maybe not such an overreach. So it's something that definitely we're going to be watching closely. So speaking of cuts, and a completely different kind of cut, it's for Univision, Televisa Univision, right, on YouTube TV in Monumental Sports, right? But NBC Universal came out okay.
Somehow, some way. Yes. Yesterday or on Tuesday, the agreements for YouTube TV, Televisa Univision, YouTube TV, NBC Universal, and Monumental, which we'll get to in a second, but they were all set to expire. Televisa Univision, John, I know you'll talk about in a second, didn't have the best of luck, so those networks went dark, but NBCU, they reached a short-term agreement, and then they reached a full deal a couple days later, which keeps NBC stations, keeps all the NBCU networks like CNBC, Golf Channel, E, Bravo on YouTube TV. It also adds Peacock to the primetime channels option that YouTube offers, which lets you subscribe to third-party streaming services, kind of like how Prime does their Prime channels as well. But obviously, Peacock was sort of that main stickler in the negotiations. There, YouTube TV reportedly wanted to ingest Peacock, and obviously NBCU is saying no. But it seems like the two reached a resolution, and they'll have a multi-year deal. And my favorite part about this is just the revival of NBC Sports Network. It's just time is a flat circle. We'll all keep coming around. But I have a sneaky feeling that NBCU won't want to get back into the RSN game. So, or I guess they're still technically in it, but they won't want to get back to the level that they were. And quick note about the Monumental, which again went dark. Apparently their deal was attached to the NBCU deal because they were previously NBC Sports Washington. So it makes sense that deal expired. However, YouTube TV is pretty apparent with their decision to not really carry RSNs, and that's across the US. They do have some, but it doesn't seem like Monumental or fans in the DC area should expect Monumental to make a quick and swift return to YouTube TV. But who knows? Who knows? The Capital season and the Wizards season start soon, so I'm sure a lot of fans will be antsy, especially if it's Alex Ovechkin's last year. But John, what's the latest on Televisa Univision? Obviously, that's a big one considering they have the NL rights for the ongoing MLB playoffs, Spanish language, I should clarify. But what's going on with Televisa Univision and YouTube TV?
Well, Noah, the vibes are off. Nowhere near as amicable as NBC Universal and YouTube TV. I mean, listen, things got so ugly from the very beginning, or at least when we heard of it publicly, which was at the start of September. Televisa Univision put out an ad campaign on social media. I saw it on X. The proposal that Televisa Univision took issue with was that YouTube TV proposed to move Televisa Univision's networks to a $15 a month Spanish add-on package as part of the service. And Televisa Univision accused YouTube TV of saying that it was charging their customers a 18% Hispanic tax. And that's a quote. That's a quote from the ad. And I'd heard from my sources that, Google was pretty disappointed that they went public so early into the negotiation. I mean, not early, but the deadline wasn't until September 30th. And this happened, I think, first week of September. So we've been pretty aware of everything going on that front. I also heard from a YouTube TV spokesperson that they felt that Televisa Univision had mischaracterized the dispute by only focusing on the proposal to move networks to a Spanish add-on. The spokesperson told me that Google had also proposed to keep Televisa Univision's networks on the base package and this is a quote, at economics that reflect their performance. I don't know what that performance is, what those numbers are, but it seems pretty clear that Television Univision wasn't happy about whatever terms Google presented. Obviously, this has awareness on the Hill. The Congressional Hispanic Caucus sent a letter to Google urging for a some kind of solution for this dispute to end. And Senator Ted Cruz also tweeted about it a couple of weeks ago. So there is a lot of awareness about this issue and how it'll hurt Spanish language audiences on the service. Televisa Univision also made the point to say that the fact that the networks were removed on Tuesday evening, which was when the deadline was, the fact that this was done on Hispanic Heritage Month added insult to injury. So it's just very ugly, I would say. And obviously there hasn't been a renewal deal struck since then. The networks remain off of the service. And Televisa Univision obviously has been in this situation before. I know they had a dispute in 2018 with Dish Network, and they haven't been back on Sling TV, I believe. So it's not looking good for Televisa Univision. We'll see what happens. And the fact that the deal with NBC Universal has been struck, and that includes Telemundo. So Spanish language audiences will be served by at least one of the two broadcasters. It's tough to see a resolution anytime soon, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah. Well, you never know. I mean, things surprise us, but it definitely sounds like it's usually about money, and that seems to be at play here. And it could go a while. Like it was also Dish Network, and they're still off all these years later. That was a pretty ugly fight. Once upon a time, the Univision broadcast networks didn't seek retransmission consent. It was must carry. So compared to some other broadcasters, they're still a little bit newer in that space. But we'll see what's ahead. So speaking of, our spooky theme for this episode, it is October. And I know, John, you were just writing about something called Fear Fest.
Yeah, I got to do for our programmers page this month a breakdown of AMC Fear Fest, what they have planned for this year. That includes airing The Shining and Misery, both Stephen King, classic Stephen King movies that are celebrating major anniversaries this year. Obviously, the marathon is serving up all kinds of Halloween and Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street goodness. But they also are sending a really cool mailer to the press that I want to show off as a little show and tell. I got this really nice Fear Fest box from our pals at AMC. If you open it up, it talks, and I don't know if the mic will pick it up.
I heard a whisper of something.
Yeah, heard a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's a host and curator of this year's Fear Fest, Janelle Monet, welcoming us to Fear Fest. And then inside is a very nice little set for this weekend, which is a bottle of Bacardi with a nice glass set and a shaker, and perfect little companion to a weekend of horror fun that I plan to have. Thanks so much, AMC, and it was such a pleasure writing about that this week. I'm looking forward to some spooky fun. Not necessarily of the true crime variety. I know that's more your bag, Amy, but yeah, looking forward to it.
Well, stay away from any fiber cuts while you're doing it, and then maybe save a little bit of that so that maybe for our next episode we can break in and have a few drinks to go with our download.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, it was great. We'll see you all next time on the CFX Download.